Today we have you with us. He's an integral part. He is a founder member of Living Theories. Welcome you on the channel. We'll be all the more happy to have more discussions about gamification, your experience, your journey. And as we have been talking about how gamification is changing the world, more precisely from your viewpoint, we'll be all the more happy to listen to that as well. So without much delay, let's begin our discussion. We'd be happy to know more about the idea, concept, and the story in brief about living theories, you.
Sure. Hi guys. So my name is Xi-Wei or Wei, and basically I run a company called Living Theories. So we focus on gamification solutions for different organizations and agencies, mainly for engagement experiences. So we want to strive to maximize people engagement within organizations, regardless of whether you're looking at engaging your own staff or your team members, or whether you're engaging your consumers in general. Yeah. So we started Living Theories about 5 years ago, and we've been working with quite a lot of different companies and government agencies within Singapore as well, and a few overseas engagements.
So while you look at engagement as a centerpiece, it is more crucial to understand people behavior, at times
Mhm.
teams behavior, and more importantly, the management who is taking decisions on the people. So how difficult was you at times to convince the top management that this is something you should think of? I mean,
Sure.
because because at the end of the day, see, the end user of at times is definitely benefiting out of it. The top
Mhm.
management is not able to visualize what what will happen. How do you convince those people?
Oh, that's usually the most challenging thing, especially within Asia itself. We know that gamification is a buzzword. It's the latest buzzword that everyone wants to jump on, but no one knows how to figure out. Whereas in the US and in Europe, I think they're quite a lot more advanced in terms of their mindset, right? So I think for senior management, it's about showing them relevant case studies. It's about showing them what their audiences think about, and it's about showing them how to really look at a new generation of consumers or even your own staff, what they value. And once we show them that connection, it's easier to get their buy-in.
But was what it was difficult for you to get the first customer in place because there were
Very
probably no case studies to talk about. There was
exactly.
almost zero experience. Although you had worked for Singapore Airlines, you had that relevant experience. But again, when you reach out to the first company, your first customer, your first probable clientele, it is difficult for attempts you to tell them that see we can change things. You just need to give a chance. How difficult was that?
Oh,
And what was that context? How did you crack that first deal?
sure, it was insanely difficult, especially if you understand a little bit about Singapore, where I'm from. Singapore is quite conservative in terms of how they look at things, so everything needs to be tried and proven before it's adopted. So that's usually part of the challenge. So I think that harkens back to the origins of living theories and why we started. Why I left as you mentioned, I was from Singapore Airlines, and why I left Singapore Airlines to start living theories. So we wanted to reinvent training in itself, training and development, because we felt that it was very learning outcome driven but not experience driven, and experience is really important as we now know, right? So the first thing that we actually built was a program that got students to think about their careers but in the guise of a game, and then as that grew, corporate companies started saying, "Hey, this works for students, right? Do you think it'll work for my own team members?" So we started doing it as corporate retreats. It started going well, and then they said, "Hey, that was quite fun. Can you design some of our other experiences?" So then we moved in. Um, so I think it was quite a few years of working through that. Um, One of the biggest challenges I think is the fact that everyone wants to see what another person does. So until someone gets on board, right, it's impossible to get your first client. So we work quite hard on that. Yeah.
Was it also a good idea to convince the first clientele saying that this could be a first mover's advantage? I mean, others are not doing it, and you probably would be the first company in whatever space, maybe the retail space, maybe the airline space, maybe the hospitality space, to do this, and maybe you can probably have a higher, I mean, a firm performance or a team performance or a individual performance. Was that a good motivation factor for them?
I think that's a great motivation factor all the way until it comes to cost. So everyone gets like really excited. Yes, I want to be the first, and then oh no, it's actually going to cost money. Maybe I'll wait to see if or my boss doesn't approve. Then we go through that whole cycle again. So I think what we realize is that people are easily excited about the notion of gamification and the notion of engaging their people, but then they struggle to kind of reconcile that with like the the return of investment, right? Your ROIs and whether it's actually a value for money proposition that we're giving them. Yeah. So until we convince the first few clients, and then the rest of the clients start saying, okay, I get it now.
I think it is more about understanding the psyche of a doctor. Because the first patient should be treated well. The second patient obviously will have a free word of mouth, and then the patients will follow. So it's the same way. I mean, you cannot say, "Yeah, I have just because I have earned a degree of a doctorate, I am an MBBS or I am an
Yeah.
MD." So it's the same situation out there, and so setting up that mark, I'm sure, is very very difficult.
Yeah.
What about so because you've also seen three different phases largely in gamification: A, the pre-gamification challenges; B, the implementation phase; and C, the toughest part is the post-implementation
Mhm.
because it's a very very dynamic thing to happen. It's not a constant thing. You can't implement one technology and you're like, whoa, everything is done.
Yeah.
So how difficult is to or what challenges do you face in each of the three phases: the pre-implementation, the during implementation, and the post-implementation of gamification?
I think for us, in terms of pre-implementation, it's actually the part where we come in a lot, because people are always interested in strategy development and how we can look at it, and there are a lot of iterations that we'll go through to ensure that we're hitting the right spots, right? Um, During implementation, the first couple of runs usually will be a bit shaky because even the staff who are trained to or who will be trained to implement these projects or these programs are not used to the idea of of gamification or a gamified experience. So they usually have to change their mindset beyond the training. So this takes a little bit of time. But as with most operations, I think once it starts flowing, everyone just falls into place, or they start adapting, to their own style. And we tell them that, yeah, that's the whole point of gamification. It's human focused behavior, right? So you can adapt it, you can let it flow. So that's great. I think our biggest challenge comes in post implementation, because a lot of uh, clients or a lot of organizations tend to say, "Oh, that was fun, that was great. Okay, we've gotten what we needed. Thanks for coming." And there's no follow up or there's no phase two, which we always tell them. It's a marathon, lah. So a lot of these challenges, I think most of it will come in post implementation. I think you might see that as well in a lot of case studies. A lot of case studies report maybe the first 3 months of success, but they don't actually follow up with like a year or like 2 years as to what happened to the program, right? So I think these are the things that we'll see quite often.
I think that's very, very true because often, and this is absolutely right what you are pointing out, you that we also realize that gamification sometimes is often discussed as a short-lived
Yeah,
strategy, may not be a long-term strategy which the companies might want to look at. Interestingly, with whatever I have done, and so I have done my recent PhD in gamification. I was working in the same area. I
mhm,
also realized that human minds are very, very finicky. They keep changing their preferences, their choices.
yeah,
So today I might be more interested in playing game A. Tomorrow I would like game B. I'm sticking to OTT channel one. Tomorrow I like OTT channel two. Or the new series coming up. So I have to be hooked in a different way.
yeah,
The hook has to change. Often companies do not understand
yeah.
that there is a
Correct.
change in hook,
Yeah,
and therefore and they believe that because I have achieved the so-called result in the next first 3 months, I may not want living stories to come back
yeah,
probably.
yeah. Absolutely agree. And
That
I think part of the challenge also is that they need to see it as a marketing campaign of sorts, right? In that your marketing message changes over time, based on your consumers. If you're targeting a new audience, their hooks are different. What they are attracted by are different. So older generation, for example, they're more driven by collection type games, right? Where I can collect resources and stuff. That excites the older generation a lot. Whereas younger generation people tend to focus on like mechanics and like how to explore and how to show freedom of choice and making mistakes and things like that. So tailoring your solution is very important to the right audience, I think.
And that is absolutely fine because this is your right in saying that because I also remember that the kind of games the elder generation would play when
Yeah,
they were young,
yeah,
they were
exactly.
more collectibles, right? They used to
Yeah,
collect stamps, they used to
yep,
collect whatever
right.
things. I mean, whatever was
Yeah,
available then. They used to collect those things. They should
yeah,
have so that is where the collection nature or the nature of
correct.
those people or those generation is bringing in. Our generation or the younger generation or the millennial generation Y Z whatever you want to
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
they might they are absolutely explorers. They want to explore the world. They have to go on.
exactly.
They want to do backpacking, and
Yeah,
that's the reason why games like Pokemon Go and everything has been the new generation games. I
yeah,
would say.
yeah. Whereas the older generation like things like collecting a lot of coins, or like different rubies and currencies and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really about understanding this, understanding the trend, and if we do want to predict things, then what does the new generation want? What are they concerned about? What do they play, and how can we connect with them through that? You know?
So interestingly, why I was very curious to know this that your the name of the company is Living Theory,
Yeah,
and today we are living in this world of analytics. Everything is analytics. So interestingly, people don't talk about theories in general. Uh,
yeah.
so what made you choose this, the name of the company, Living Theories? Very,
Oh,
very interesting thought.
thanks a lot, man. I think you're like the first person to ask me this in quite a few years, so I appreciate that. Um, so I think we were going through a lot of different names, a lot of different ways to brand our company, and what we realized was that we wanted to make it a self-driven experience, and b understand that a lot of times we don't live our own theories. Everyone has a theory for doing. If I wish I could have done this. If I were doing it, I would have done it a different way. So our job is to tell you that yeah, I think we are all living theorists in our own way. We all have our own theories about everything, and we all try our best to live it. So we like to say, if you look at our logo, the T is in front of the L. So we like to use our theories to lead how we tend to move forward. And yeah, I think yeah, that's been quite meaningful for us so far.
That's very, see, I also understand the meaning of every logo and everything is has to be linked accordingly. So I couldn't find this kind of an answer in whatever I have been reading about you for quite some time now. So I was very curious and I was like, this is something which our viewers probably want to know that what made you choose an interesting, I mean, it's very, very interesting. I haven't really come across any company which has been more focused on theory and obviously is practicing theory. And you are absolutely right in saying that you that because there are people, everybody has their own theory in life, and they try to live that. And often they do not want to impose their theoretical viewpoints on anybody else. They
Yeah,
said, okay,
yeah.
this is my idea of living my life. Fantastic, great,
Yeah.
and everybody's everything, everybody's life.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah, absolutely. And I also think that one of the main reasons why we also chose living theories and we're in gamification is that theories are theories, but when put into the real world, they become very organic and they change, right? Like games. We can design a game all we want, right, or an experience, but when we put it to the players decide and they dictate how they play the game. And as designers, we then kind of have to look at, okay, how did they take my message and turn it around, right? So I think it's the same with theories. You have a theory, you put it front, and you realize, oh, that works, that doesn't work. This has to change, that has to change. So yeah, I think that's how we live our lives in living theories, actually.
Absolutely true. The other day I was reading one of your other interviews published in, I think I don't remember the outlet, but you have been
Mhm.
focusing more on this why part before the how part.
Yes.
When we often, and this is a debate, and I think often most of the people whom we have interviewed as a part of our channel, they also have talked about the why, the importance of why in as a question to answer in
Yeah.
gamification than how part. So how critical was, how much difficult was to explain your customers that why is important than just how.
Oh, yeah, that that actually was that was actually how we actually designed our first program for schools, right? We realized that a lot of students on the way they chose their careers, or they looked at their futures was really based on I'm good at math, so I'll be an engineer. I'm good at English, so I should be a teacher or something like that. It's very stereotypical, it's very plain, right? And then we said, no, your why is a much stronger drive than just what you're good at, right? And we realized that's why why people play games is more important than what people play. Um, so in the same vein, their purpose was a lot more important than just their outcome. When we explain this to our clients, we always tell them, you don't just want to jump into a digital app just because everyone else is. What is your purpose? What is your what are your audience's purpose, your consumers, right? And once they get that and they stop and they think about like, oh, why are we actually doing this? Then they start to figure out, okay, right, this is why we're doing it. It becomes clearer to me. I now have a better idea of what product I want to build, or what thing, what outcome I want, and then I figure out um, how I want to do it. So the how is actually the last stage. Simon. So this comes from Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. If you're familiar with Simon Sinek, right? His TED Talk is like one of the most popular TED
Best
Talk.
at talk.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So he focuses on why, how, what. We focus on why, what, how. We get you to figure your why first. Then we get you to figure your what. And then we'll figure out how to get there. So that's our process with our clients.
I think that is absolutely fine. I think one of the most watched, one of the most cherished tech talks of all times. I don't
Yeah, yeah,
disagree
yeah.
with you on that. I think anybody and everybody who has been in this profession of gamification has at least once heard about that tech talk. I think
Yeah,
fantastically delivered as well. But it is also interesting to understand that while you deal with multiple set of clientele, and this clientele could range from a small business to a large organization,
yeah, 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 yeah.
how difficult, or how difficult is not actually the wrong word. I mean, how do you customize your game elements? Because
Yeah,
the challenge is games are even evolving. I mean,
yeah.
as the profession gamification is all evolving, I realize that every day I search for new games, I could find a ton of new games being out there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I haven't played this game. Let me try my hand out on this. So, how difficult was you to understand the games, the right elements, and then apply it to the different businesses?
Okay. So here's where what we do is slightly different, I think, from what most other people are doing. We are not in the business, and gamification isn't in the business of building games. We're in the business of studying games and understanding games and applying some of the theories and mechanics to different industries, different, as you said, small to big companies, organizations, so on and so forth, right? And for us, if you look at all the games out there, and as you said, every time I type in a game, right, 10 different variations come out like tomorrow. But there are a few critical elements that always remain the same. Most games, uh, especially genres of games, revolve around the same 10 things, just worked out differently, like a dish, right? You use the same 10 ingredients, but you're making it in different ways. Some things you stew longer, some things you flash fry and you deep fry and things like that, right? So the method it might be different, but a lot of the core elements still remain the same. Simply because people are driven by the same things. They're driven by the same types of motivation. They're driven by the same uh, behaviors that cause them to fall in love with the game in the first place. So you will see that, for example, Call of Duty, right? You're familiar with Call of Duty, yeah? So once Call of Duty started to deviate too much from its core theme, their players started giving up, and they were like, no, this is not what I want. Then you realize, oh, okay, there's a reason why people stick to a particular set of games. So when we do study, we study the broad genre, we study what elements the genre contains, and then we'll study, okay, there are like 50 games here. Out of the 50 games, how do they look at the same genre differently? And then that makes it easier for us.
Absolutely. I think this is true for the reasons, true for that, the simple reason that why certain games have been all-time hits.
Hmm.
All-time hits is because they have not changed their core game mechanics. They have
Mm.
still stick to that, and I think that's the reason why certain games have also seen their downfall.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that has been true. While obviously nostalgia comes into picture, and we all definitely want to play games we used to play during our childhood days. Maybe start playing Mario there,
yeah,
start playing Contra there, or similar kind of a games which used to play, or even the most cult game of all times is Snake. We still
yeah,
live
yeah,
around with it.
exactly, right?
So they haven't changed the mechanics of the simple one snake chasing one dot. It's the most simple game of all time. That you cannot complicate this, or Pac-Man for that matter. This is the
Yeah,
reason why we picked up as our logo also. Most simple game. There's no complication out there. Just eat those 200 dots and you're done with the game. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. You know, And if you realize, right, yeah, it's a great point, Abhishek. If you look at how games evolve today, games function a lot like companies. Some games are very afraid of losing their old clientele or their old players, right? So games like Diablo, for example, when they now everyone and like World of Warcraft, a lot of Blizzard games, what they're actually looking at is just reinventing the old. It's the same game, but they touch up the graphics and they say, hey, nostalgia, come back and play this game, right? Whereas games that are newer, like League of Legends, they're not afraid of changing the entire dynamic of the game in order to kind of drive a new, kind of behavior, right? And that might lose some of the old players, but it will gain new players. So games kind of function as companies as well, or like companies in terms of how they look at business, how they look at people, and what they want. Yeah, so absolutely, simplest mechanics can work, timeless, but the more complex mechanics also drive new players.
Absolutely. Now, this is an interesting thing. I think one of the questions which keeps haunting me, and in fact a lot of people, is
Sure.
that do you also see that game mechanics are much more customized based on different age and gender of people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen that?
Yeah,
Have you seen
absolutely.
your experiences that while you design or while you customize a plan, if I'm targeting a millennial group, I need to use a different game mechanic. Which you were right in saying that the elder group was has to be more encased by giving them collectible items.
Yeah.
That is absolutely fine. But interestingly, there is a mix of these people in our organization. There will be 20% people who are the older generation, 60% people who are in the mid career, and then the 20% which are the most youngest lot. How do you customize, or do you customize in the first place when you roll out one package deal to the company?
Yeah, so in terms of what we produce or how we work, what would the question be regarding to, Abhishek?
So how do you do that?
So I think what we tend to do is we work in three phases. As you mentioned, pre-implementation, implementation, and post, right? So, but we break it up into three phases called the study phase, the build phase, and the play phase. So within the study phase, we get a concrete brief of what the client is looking for. So, for example, an agency is looking at engaging youths and wanting to see how they can create a program for youths to engage in talks about racial harmony, for example, right? Then we know what our target demographic is, we know what topics they want, and then we can start to look around to see what their current behaviors are, what games they play, and what they look at. Compared to someone who says, "Hey, we want to create something so that, or we want to create a program so that the elder generation can eat medicine or can go for medical therapy more consistently." So then we'll look at a different kind of mechanic to drive, that kind of behavior, right? So uh, it really depends on the audience. It really depends on what their outcomes are. Sometimes what is the lowest hanging fruit doesn't get you the right outcome, right? So we have to take all that into consideration as we're developing the mindset. Yeah.
Do you also feel that there's any untouched area which your company would like to explore going forward? I mean, you could
Uh,
definitely. The reason why am I asking this, because a lot of times we get requests saying that we want to do something.
yeah.
We'll be all the more happy as Gamification for All to recommend that, hey, there's somebody called Living Theory. There are people doing this kind of work.
Yeah.
Please reach out to those, and I think they will be helping you out in the right way possible. So,
Yeah.
any future plans?
I think as a company, I've made my peace with the fact that we want to focus more on thought leadership. We want to focus more on our brains. There's so many app development companies out there. There's so many video game designers out there. There's so many training companies out there. There isn't really one that focuses on understanding and applying game mechanics as a consultancy. So that's something that we're doing in Southeast Asia. So as long as you're trying to drive new behaviors, I think we want to hear from you. Um, in terms of industries that we would like to get into, I think we want to look at how gamification can drive perspectives for the future, for the next 50 years. What will happen in 50 years' time in terms of so we've been approached and we want to do more of these things in terms of climate change, in terms of globalization, in terms of pandemic, right? So now that the pandemic is out, you realize that actually a lot of games have touched on pandemics before. It's just, have we learned from that behavior? We want to touch on how we can make the future more sustainable and more worthwhile. I think those are topics that we're really interested in.
I think that those all of those will also fit into the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as we say. I
Yeah,
think those,
absolutely.
if I want to summarize most of your points, that will exactly fit in there. And I think a lot of people, organizations, NGOs, government is now looking at that sector more actively.
Hmm.
With the recent COVID-19, obviously, is like an all-time shock for everyone. While climate change
Hmm.
was always an ongoing phenomenon, this is like a wake-up call for everyone in the world, saying that
Hmm.
hey, see, things can change on in one fine day. So
Hmm.
let's be prepared for the future. And I think thought leadership is something which is the right attitude. And I think again, your company could be one of the final companies who can help people understand this and obviously implement the right elements, the right places.
Hopefully.
Fantastic. This brings us to the second part of the interview, which is
Sure.
knowing more about you, as was mentioning. So have you had any experiences in your life wherein you thought gamification is not for me? This is not my life. I should have just quit and go back to where I was, go back to Singapore Airlines or go back to something else. Any
Yeah,
quitting thought?
when the money stops flowing. No, no. I have. I mean, it's been challenging. Because we go through as a startup, and as a startup in a blue ocean. When we look at gamification consultancy, as I mentioned, I think we're the only ones in Singapore, or we're the only ones in Southeast Asia. Doing this. It's tough because people getting people on board with the idea, as you mentioned, right? Finding the clients and stuff. It's like just when you're about to give up, new clients pop up and they say, "Hey, we're in," right? And then you go through that cycle of euphoria, working with the clients, and then, oh, okay, that's done, and then you go down and up. So it's a cyclical thing. But I've also come to realize that I think, for the first time in a very very long time, what I do. I don't dread Mondays. I love Mondays. I love going to work. I love helping clients think about these things. I love building these new experiences. So yeah, no, I hope to be able to do this for a while.
Absolutely. I think the loving Monday theory is always a nicer theory to
Yeah,
be at. I
yeah.
think that in a way asserts you that you are in the right profession
Yeah, and it's a
because
privilege, right? Not everyone, most people don't enjoy Mondays, but it's a privilege to enjoy Mondays, and I also noting that what I do is different, and every cent that we make it's because of what we do. So that means something, I think.
and I think absolutely right in saying that because today being Friday, I also am equally excited as it is Monday. So
Yeah.
for me, exactly like you, we are also enjoying every bit of it. And I think for us, there are days when we often work on weekends as well because we know we love our job.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's more important for us. But so, were there any professional or are there any professional heroes, I would say, that really inspire you to be what you are doing currently? And these could be people who could be from the gamification space or not from the gamification space. For example, I am more inspired by Martin Luther King's work.
Yeah.
What he has done to the world, I want to do something like that. So, any professional heroes?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think people like Chatri from One Championship, right? I think what Chatri has done uh is to really look at things from the ground up, and build and reinvent the entire sport, from ground zero. There is a guy in Singapore called George Quack. I'm not sure if you know who he is. He's the founder of Bread Talk. So it's a company that started by with a single bread stall, and then they grew to owning food courts, bread stalls, ramen chains, and stuff like that. And for me, it's about these guys having the practical hustle to go through, keep their heads down, go through it, start with a simple product, and just build their way up. I think that's the way, and that gives me courage to say, I want to believe in what I'm doing. I want to just keep going, and the dividends comes by our hands and our own hard work. Yeah, yeah. So I think these guys.
See, I'll say one good part about both the examples which you have just cited, both the stories. If you and I don't know the other story obviously of the venture which you have talked about, but more interestingly, all these people were nothing.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
had no resources to begin with, and they have set up the entire empire of what they are doing. So be it starting a bread business and obviously a bakery business and obviously expanding it into multiple
yeah.
dimensions of it. So I think the power of starting from zero is something which is the most inspiration of the most inspiration of all time. A lot of times people believe that okay, I had a degree, I knew about behavior, I knew about gamification, I had done a course like this, and therefore I want to begin this kind
Yeah,
of venture. But I really like your idea wherein we know that we are nobody in the space and we
yeah,
want to probably be known as someone in the space. We don't
yeah,
want to be known, probably known as legend, but who knows? He could be the next legend. But that's a good approach. I think it's a very positive approach to be looked at.
yeah, yeah.
Given an opportunity to change yourself and change anything as a part of your life, anything, what would be that?
Ooh. I think so. So I would have. I know it sounds super cliche, but I would probably have paid more attention in school. I think so. There's a reason why I think I strongly believe that school arms you with a lot more than just the theories. They arm you with the mindset to do well, and the resilience to kind of go through certain things. And so I do wish that I had taken the approach of looking at subjects more seriously, to train my mind to look at things more seriously, to train myself to right now I'm a very ideas person, so I float around a lot, right? As with every game designer, we tend to fly around a lot. Oh, we can do this. Oh, we can do that. So I would train myself to be more grounded, to be more to kind of manage that. I always describe myself as a pragmatic idealist. That's the goal that I'm heading towards, I hope, in that I'm very idealistic about the world and stuff, but I have to be pragmatic. So living theories, basically. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, therefore, the tagline, which is perfectly mentioned, which is open world solutions. You are
Mm,
trying to make, and I think you are. I'm not in the right or wrong in saying that. See, we also, and I think I also almost similarly was sailing the same boat when I was young. I also was not as great what people used to be in the school days and even in the early graduation days. I now realize that, and I finished my second PhD, and I then realized that oh, I should actually have studied earlier to save all of this. So this is a running joke which I always often tell to my child as well, that you should better study now, else you will end up doing more studies in the later part of your
yeah,
life.
yeah.
So finish your quota
Well,
there.
well, well, I would also think that I think the studies in the later part of your life are actually more meaningful than the studies that you do, in the early part of your life. Because the early part of our life, we study because people tell us to study. But when we choose our mode of studies as we get older, especially people who take like mid career degrees or diplomas and stuff, they know why they're studying, they know what they want, and I think that's a lot more meaningful in terms of what they're learning. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think that can also be gamified in the future.
absolutely, 100%. Yeah, yeah, 100%.
I think
Yeah,
that is something.
sorry to interrupt you. It was
Yeah,
interesting
I'm
because
saying, yeah.
I
Please just
was
go ahead.
yeah, thank you. I was presenting at the adult learning symposium in Singapore. So I was presenting on gamification, and one of the keynote speakers, I think he mentioned something really really important, that educational half life is decreasing crazily, right? So what we know is only relevant for a few years because of technology, because of the way things change. So what this means is that we really have to take control of our own learning, our own development. We can't rely on people telling us what to learn anymore. uh you know I mean, your parents, what they know is very different from what we know. So I think it's that constant process of like learning, tearing down what you know and restarting the process, that's quite meaningful. Yeah.
Interestingly, one of the common things which you also face, and I think a lot of people post as a simple query,
Mm,
and I keep, and this is my one of the last questions of my section too, is that there are people who want to enter this profession of
mm,
gamification. They're
mm.
equally naive as probably both of us were. We had some idea, but we never knew how to get enter this field. What is right? What is wrong?
Yeah.
What should we not do? What should we do? So, do you want to? I mean, we would be happy to know your recommendations of any book, any reading material, any certifications, any people to follow,
Yeah.
so that we don't make, I mean, the next generation don't make mistakes what we probably made. So, any thoughts on that? Any
Yeah.
suggestions?
Sure. So I think, okay, we all know the familiar names of who to follow in gamification, right? People like Yukai, people like Zickerman and stuff like that. and of course McGonagall, Jay McGonagall, right? But I think what's more important with gamification that I've realized is that it's really a lot more about the theories. But no, sorry, it's only so much about the theories and a lot more about how you apply it. So a lot of marketing campaigns, a lot of people who were doing business and just trying to make better business or try to do things better, unwittingly stumble upon gamification. They're unwittingly doing things that, hey, are things that we study, right, in gamification, and that they don't even realize. So it's about coming up with as much practical understanding of the world around you and how to apply certain theories or how to look at it. So sometimes when I look at like a cafe and I see something that interests me, like, oh wow, that's really clever, and then I start thinking, which game does this remind me of? Like, which game does this? And then I go, oh yeah, okay, fair enough. And then you start making that connection to say, okay, so therefore, what else can I learn from a game? What else can I learn from an experience that will drive me to do it? And I think someone who is intending on entering the space should understand this a little bit better to say, okay, how do I apply? How do I apply? How do I see? That's the only way that companies tend to go. I see the value that you're trying to bring.
Also see, and this is obviously not this is not a practical thing happening. I also would like to have more case studies around this as a
Mm,
thing, because I think you were also discussing about the same, that the world also needs to know the customized solution which happened for a company,
yeah.
for an organization, for a simple restaurant, for an airline business, anybody for that matter. So because it is not one thumb rule which can be applied everywhere. It has to be customized, and therefore, life stories, similarly, case studies are something which are it has to be more prevalent in the space. Unfortunately, we are not able to find those, but I'm sure in times to come there will be more pragmatic case studies. I would say, to be honest,
Mm,
and I'm sure that will happen.
yeah.
But this brings us to the last part of the session, which I
Sure.
already talked about, which is a small game which we intend to play. The game is pretty simple,
Yep.
and the game is all about knowing more about what is unknown. Right, so we usually say this
Okay.
as a dark web game. Nothing about that. The idea is that I will say a word, and
Yep.
the first word which comes to your mind, you will give me an answer back.
Sure.
There's only one rule of the game, that you cannot take time. Time is
Okay.
a constraint. Right? So in the Yukai Cho's world, this is
Yeah.
one of those octalysis framework. I'm talking about one of the key elements out there, which is scarcity, right? So
Yeah.
scarcity is what they talked
Scarcity.
about.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Fear of
So are you
missing out.
ready?
Okay.
Absolutely. Ready? Learning,
Development.
sport,
Play.
life,
Love.
travel,
World.
friends,
Ship.
talents,
Challenge. Process.
luck.
Luck.
Come on, quick, 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 quick.
Look. Yeah. Yeah. Ownership.
Okay. Music,
Arts.
video games,
Passion.
books,
Read.
heroes,
Important.
hobbies.
Critical.
And the last part is most important, is theories.
Living.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thanks a lot. And I think this has been a nice experience for me as well. And I think I'm sure the viewers will also enjoy that.
Absolutely.